The Flyin Lion says,
boys, hell is real.
2023 Supporter Shield champs.
Just give me a reason to drink some Guinness in the morning.
Yeah, just a fan of the sport, you know.
I appreciate the opportunity.
It's definitely tougher to be an academy player than it is a pro.
Soccer's my favorite sport now.
The jersey swap was
my car of the week, trivia question of the week. All right, ladies and gentlemen, Flyin Lion Podcast, new interviewee, Scott from the Belgian Football Podcast. Scott, it's good to have you on, man.
It's great to be here. Thanks for the invite, Sam.
Yeah, no problem. So to start out the podcast here, obviously FC Cincinnati has signed a new player from the Belgian Pro League in Kevin Denkey. That happened, earlier last week, as we're probably airing this. But can you kind of tell us, first of all, how, your podcast started, what you cover, kind of give some background on what you guys do.
Yeah, sure. Well, I'm one of the three-man team behind the Belgian Football Podcast, which is an English language-based podcast covering the Belgian Pro League. We also cover the division below the top division and the national team as well. So if you're looking for independent coverage of Belgian football that covers everybody, because we're not club specific actually, we try to cover everybody in as much detail as possible. We produce a weekly show that looks all the latest news and action across the Belgian Pro League, and from time to time throughout the season we produce extra special episodes where we get guests on, often from inside clubs, to talk about specific aspects of football. So we might, for example, have a director of football or a technical director on from inside a club to talk about the work they're doing inside the club that they're based at. So the big thing for us is we're English language based and we're independent. We've been running for around 4 years now. We are the only ones kind of covering Belgian football to the extent that we do. In an independent way, which seems to have kind of really taken off. There seems to be an appetite for it. So when we first started a number of years ago, most of our listeners were actually based in the UK, but as time has gone on, the majority of our listeners now are actually based in Belgium. So Belgian football fans inside Belgium itself and outside, because we do have quite a lot of listeners based in the States, because I think it's ESPN, have the rights to around 4 live games a week. Mm-hmm. So there's reasonably good access, if you have access to ESPN, to kind of follow Belgian football in English. So there's a lot of American interest in Belgian football at the moment. And things have just really taken off for us over the last few years. So people seem to be enjoying what they're doing, so much so that I was able to set up my own kind of freelance Belgian football consultancy, which allows me to do a little bit of work for players and agents and clubs from time to time as well. So the interest is definitely growing all the time.
Yeah, absolutely. That's really cool that you're kind of able to grow this and stay even more connected to the game, right? To a whole nother level. I'm sure, being able to talk to the players, talk to, agents, stuff like that, takes, not only the podcast, but also like your experience through this whole thing, like to another level, right? But through this whole process of you talked about kind of not only, I feel like soccer in general has grown, like just continues to grow around the world. I know obviously big part of it is because the United States is kind of growing as well in not only MLS, but also like its interest in European soccer, right? Like you said, like big media conglomerates like ESPN now are showing all these games on ESPN Plus. I believe Bundesliga is on ESPN Plus as well. So all these kind of big, U.S. entities are showing it off as well. So that interest continues to climb. So first of all, speaking of U.S. stuff, have you heard of FC Cincinnati before?
I have, yes.
Okay.
I haven't seen too much MLS in quite some time. I tend to only really see Belgian football, funnily enough. I'm based in Scotland. at the moment, which is where I'm from. Trying to get to Belgium as much as possible, obviously, to see games and things like that. But fortunately, I'm able to see as many Belgian games as I want. Every weekend, which is obviously important if you're doing the podcast. You're watching a lot of action. It's just as well there's three of us on the team. It'd be a very, very difficult ask for even a couple of people, I think. So you can spread the load sometimes, which is important when you try to cover as much as we do.
You gotta get you a couple interns.
Yeah. Well, that's what I mean. We're not because we're not focused in any one club. We like to watch everything. Which obviously increases the demands on our time and on our research and all sorts of things. So having three pairs of hands becomes very, very useful, particularly when one of us is on holiday as well. So a dedicated bunch. Yeah, I don't get to see much MLS at all, or indeed any other football really from any other country other than Belgium. In fact, I don't even see very much local football here in Scotland where I'm based anymore. I used to see quite a lot of that, obviously, because it's very easy for me to do that. But almost all of my football time kind of goes into that. It's pretty all consuming. You do keep a kind of cursory eye on generally what's happening in other countries without necessarily being aware of kind of all of the detail.
Do you recall FC Cincinnati signing Kenny Saif on loan from Anderlecht? I think it was 2019, 2020 at all. Do you remember that?
Yeah, I do remember that. Yeah,
because Ryan and I were talking about that last episode because we do a trivia of the week every week, right? And so that was one of his was like, has FC Cincinnati ever signed anybody from Belgium? Which we've signed two guys, and I was unbeknownst, about the first one that he mentioned. So didn't know if you remembered that.
Yeah, I do have a kind of vague awareness of that. I mean, I've been lucky enough to do quite a lot of travelling in Belgium and get to know the country quite well. I've always liked it, and getting involved in the Belgian Football Podcast very much was a happy accident for me, and just meeting certain people at a certain point and it all kind of coming together. You keep an eye on the most obscure kind of details sometimes, and often when you're doing your research of different kinds for different types of media, whether it's podcast work, and sometimes I do a little bit of radio and have done some television work as well. You go down all sorts of rabbit holes with your research. One of them is often trivia like that. Has this club signed anyone else from that country or that club or those sorts of things before, because those through lines are always fascinating, particularly from a fan point of view. Yeah, I do. I don't remember him much as a player, but I certainly came across that. Yeah.
So you were talking about kind of like you've kind of followed MLS in general, like whenever you do see things, around the world, some, big moments. I'm sure you've seen players recently, big names like Olivier Giroud join MLS and so on. But how has kind of, from your perspective as someone who covers, Belgium soccer or even like you said, or in Scotland, how has kind of the MLS league's reputation improved in your eyes, or in terms of quality, or kind of, like we talked about, attract global talent? Like, from your perspective over there in Europe, like, has anything changed from the MLS, or people in Europe kind of like, well, they're kind of on the outside of the big leagues, but they're never going to be in the club if you know?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think as the game's grown over the years in the States, which it continues to do, the attention has grown. Attendances have grown, and I think more and more money's come into the game and been invested in the infrastructure. So the game at all sorts of levels, both on and off the pitch, is kind of growing. And I think it has gone from being a game that really wasn't really on the radar of anybody, culturally as a sport in the States, to one that now does have a following. It's obviously not comparable still anywhere near other sports, but when you compare it in context, it has exploded relative to where it's come from. I think the significant thing here is the increased revenues, the amount of money flowing around the MLS now. That means that they are able to compete for talent coming out of Europe in a way that they weren't able to do before. And it's become quite an attractive destination for players that many people would know, elite players. You mentioned Olivier Giroud there, Lionel Messi, players who, when they get to the kind of twilight years of their career, it becomes very attractive, I think, to go to the States, have a big payday, play in environments where you still get big crowds, so you still get a good atmosphere, and depending on where you're playing, the majority of locations, the weather is actually quite good as well. So from a financial point of view, and a football and culture point of view, generally the news is positive. I think often when players are still on a kind of upward trajectory in their career and have a lot of development potentially still, there is this view from most of Europe that coming to the MLS is not the best destination to go to necessarily develop your career. But I think if you go there early enough, you can spend 2 or 3 or even 4 years there, and then come back to Europe still, at the peak of your career. So it's interesting that we've convened to talk about a player who is still does have age in his side, and has come to the MLS, much to a lot of people's surprise, and that has a lot to do with the fact that Cincinnati have taken real advantage of the fact that the European window is still closed, and it's closed till January. So despite the significant interest in Kevin Denkey, Cincinnati have been able to move fast and take advantage of the kind of contextual situation, because the European window's closed, so their competitors weren't really able to do anything for another few weeks yet. So from a strategic point of view and a footballing operations point of view, Cincinnati have actually played their cards very well here, I think.
Yeah, I mean, if we're going to roll right into it then, with Kevin Denkey signing with FC Cincinnati, I think you touch on there, FC Cincinnati was kind of able to use this window to their advantage, and even having Kevin Denkey come to one of the games, right? Asked permission from the club and was able to come over, be able to be there for the New York City FC game, to be able to witness, hey, this is what it's going to be like for you when you come. So I can't say, how many teams would have, invited him during midseason, right, over in Europe or something like that. But it is an interesting scenario. But talking with Kevin Denkey, you talked about, how many teams actually, we've seen the reports of all these big name clubs in Europe that have been coming after him for years, right? And FC Cincinnati being able to lock this down, get him for a club record fee. Is he kind of the real deal that everybody in Europe thinks he is?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of factors that have kind of come together on this deal. It feels like the transfer's been coming for a long time. So there was an expectation over the summer in Europe that it was kind of Kevin's moment to move on. Last season, he finished in Belgium as the Pro League's top scorer, so he won the Golden Boot for the top scorer in Belgium. He also won the Ebony Shoe Award, which is an award given out in Belgium to the best player of African origin or descent, and that's a very interesting and unique award in its own right. Because a lot of African players come to Belgium when they leave Africa. It's their first port of call in European football before they might move somewhere else. So there's a very close relationship between African football and Belgium for a range of cultural reasons. And there's a big African community generally in Belgium. It's quite significant. So Kevin came off the back of last season, having scored 28 goals in 39 games and finishing as top scorer. And over the last few years, he's been at Cercle Bruges since early 2020. He's been doing better year on year, actually. So his output in terms of his numbers has been improving. So if you're a director of football or a technical director and you're looking at, right, how is this player developing? Are they getting better? Is there does their output and their numbers suggest that they're improving constantly? Then that is definitely the case with Kevin. I think there was a feeling that his financial ceiling was definitely going to be this summer in terms of a sale, because I think he decided a while ago that he wasn't going to extend his contract beyond the end of it. So to maximise the sale, the timing was right. Obviously, after the conclusion of last season, what happened over the summer was there was a lot of interest in Kevin, which there has been for a long time. Lots of clubs have been tracking him. There was concrete interest from France, Germany, Spain, and in England. Lille in France had a strong interest in him for a long time. Real Sociedad in Spain had an offer in the region of 12 million euros on the table for him over the summer, and Cercle felt they could do a little bit better than that, I think, and held off. I had a very interesting conversation with Rembert Romant, who is Cercle Bruges' technical director, a couple of months ago, right at the start of the season. I went to see Cercle playing one of their European qualifiers and had a chat with Rembert at the game, and he was telling me that there'd been a lot of interest in him, but it wasn't at a level that Cercle or Kevin were quite happy with yet, and obviously these things, it has to work for everybody. Mm-hmm. So what happened was they essentially held off a bit longer, and the window closed, without it going anywhere. The result of that was obviously Kevin got distracted, understandably, and his head had been turned a little bit, and it did affect his form, and I think it affected the mood in the camp a little bit. It's just a distraction that, you don't need. Cercle at that time, coming off the back of an excellent season last year, had been rewarded with European football, and were playing European qualifiers very early on. In fact, even before the domestic season had started. So they were juggling often 2 games a week, which was something they weren't used to. And when you've got a distraction like that around a major player, it's quite disruptive. So they have had a difficult start to the season. There have been signs over the last few weeks that they're starting to get over that. But obviously Kevin leaving, and he will be around until I think about the 15th of December. So his last game will be around about the 7th or 8th of December. So there's about 7 fixtures that Cercle have before then. We don't know how many of them Kevin will actually play in, because obviously with this deal going through, everyone's slightly worried about that risk of an injury, which obviously would put the whole deal in doubt. So I would be very surprised, if I'm honest, if Kevin played the majority of those 7 games, for those reasons. And there's another thing in the mix here in this deal that's important, in that I think Cercle were very keen to resurrect a good deal for Kevin, because they have concrete plans to build a new training centre and complex. It's all ready to go. The only thing that was missing was the finance at their end, and I think a good chunk of the money from this record deal will be used to now go ahead and allow them to do that. The remainder of the money will obviously have to go towards finding Kevin's replacement, and that's going to be a really important strategic choice for Cercle now, because they've lost their top scorer at the moment. He's on 11 and 23 in all competitions so far, if you include European football this season, with 5 assists. So after a slightly sluggish start to the season because of that distraction, he's managed to refocus and start to produce the goods. Unfortunately, taking Kevin out of that side, there's nobody really in there at the moment who's able to kind of step up to his mantle when he's not there. So who they decide to bring in now is going to have a massive bearing on the second half of Cercle Bruges' season. And I think if they don't get that right, they could have a really, really difficult second half to the season. So that's something to watch on from a Belgian perspective.
Yeah, I know. I was going to touch on that, because we had talked about, Cercle Bruges having that interest in funding their training facility, and this sale is definitely going to be able to help the club out and kind of put money back into the club to be able to raise it. I know right now you talked to, like, they're kind of at the bottom of the table right now, struggling a little bit. So to be able to get back to European football, possibly, by the end of this season, that would probably be something that they'd want. But going forward, I know, looking at his game specifically, we've seen other people from the Belgian league recently. Hugo Kuipers or Kuipers has translated, to the MLS fairly well. I believe this past season he had 10 goals, 2 assists for Chicago. So he's also a previous Golden Boot winner over there in Belgium. How do you foresee Kevin kind of translating into the MLS game? Obviously, the things that people say about the MLS game are, it's a lot more physical, and maybe it's not so much fast paced as far as like bursts of speed, but the ball is flying. And like I said, that physical nature, do you think Kevin's game will be able to translate similar to, Hugo was able to for Chicago a little bit?
Yeah, I think he'll fit in very well to that. I think allowing Kevin to kind of come over for a visit, which happened at quite short notice, I think, and it's not something he was able to do with some of his other suitors, actually. So I think this is a big factor in persuading Kevin. I mean, Kevin was talking over the last 48 hours. He gave quite an interesting interview on American television, actually, very briefly, where he did say that one of the major factors really in him deciding to come was that he felt really wanted. So he was able to see the facilities, see where he would be coming, get a little bit of exposure to that, which is very difficult to obviously just talk about. You do need to see it. And I think that was very persuasive to him. So his other suitors in Europe weren't able to do that. There were a lot of phone calls and conversations, but no physical visits. And certainly when Kevin made that visit, that weekend's league fixture was a bit difficult for Cercle because Cercle Bruges' head coach Miran Muslic was told at quite short notice, I think, that Kevin wouldn't be available for selection, so that he was allowed to kind of go and make that trip and sit down and talk to the club and look at their facilities. And I don't think he was too pleased with,
I can't imagine. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean that's a difficult ask for a coach to kind of deal with. When your most valuable player is very short notice. Told that he's unavailable. I mean, in terms of Kevin's actual game, I think that'll suit him. He's an instinctive striker, very physical, very strong, low centre of gravity, high presser, likes to play on the shoulder of people. His link-up play is very good, and he absolutely knows where the goal is. That instinctive side of his striking game is very important. He's very good with his back to defenders. He likes to bully defenders as well. He's not the strongest in the air in the sense that he doesn't score many goals with his head. So if he does score any with his head, do let us know, because that's actually quite unusual. He's, in terms of his dueling, he is okay in the air, but he doesn't score many with his head. But his all-round game is generally very strong, and he can play comfortably as a lone striker or with a partner. Back in 2022-23, he formed a really good striking partnership with a young Japanese striker at Cercle called Yazi Ueda, who got his big move to Feyenoord in the Netherlands after only one season in Belgium. And during that season, Ueda scored 23 goals, I think, and Kevin got 13. So Kevin was more of the link-up man, providing the service to Ueda that season, and they scored 36 combined between them. So that was a great partnership that worked really well. But Kevin has spent the majority of his career at Cercle over the last 4 and a bit years being the lone striker. So he's very comfortable with that. Cercle play quite a high-intensity pressing game, so they look to squeeze sides really hard in the opposition's final third. So, they look to win the ball back quickly so that they can be down the opposition's throat before they know where they are. So I think in that sense, Kevin has all of the attributes that will fit into what is the general American game. Belgium's maybe slightly faster paced game. There's a lot of dueling in Belgian football. It's pretty physical, and the transitions are kind of quite important there too. So they'll be a little bit less important, I think, in the MLS. But the main thing is he knows where the goal is. He's a big shot taker. He attempts a lot of shots as well. Instinctively, sometimes he'll shoot from slightly wild positions. He's a very positive player, and he's very hard working as well. He's got a really good attitude, Kevin. Both off the pitch and on it. He's a strong team player. He's not disruptive in any sense. He's quite a humble guy. Doesn't have a great ego, really, which is another plus, both for other players, I think, and coaches, obviously. So that's slightly less of a worry. Was working with a personal trainer for a long time outside of his footballing work, installed a home gym, which is not unusual for players, but Kevin likes to work out a lot.
Mm-hmm.
You'll notice that when you've probably seen that. Actually,
he's a big guy. Yeah.
Yeah, Kevin's a big guy. Kevin is very well ripped. He looks after himself. Speaks multiple languages. You know what I mean. So he's looking to continually developing himself in a number of ways. I think just has a really good attitude and has all of the things I think that suggest that his career is going to continue to develop and he'll get better and better. And even though in Europe there's a lot of people that are quite disappointed that he's chose to come to the MLS for the next stage of his career, he is only 23. So although it's a bumper sort of 5-year deal, he could conceivably come back to Europe later on to play for somebody else as well. But I think the timing is right for everybody, both for Circle and for Kevin to make this move now. So it's a deal that benefits everybody, this one.
Yeah. I think, the way Pat Noonan likes to play at FC Cincinnati, we've seen he kind of likes to push a high press a lot more, be able to turn the ball over, kind of like you said, squeeze the opponents a little bit. We were just missing a guy that can finish off of those chances, right? And so Kevin looks like he could be that guy to be able to be clinical and not be afraid to take shots, because that's a big thing. I know, looking at his interview, like you said, that he did with, I think it was CBS Golazo, he was talking about kind of how he's going to be able to fit in, and you can sense this sort of like humbleness about him, right? I don't think at FC Cincinnati we've really gotten like a truly humble number 9, which we all know that's very like scarce, right? Number 9s usually are kind of like the most arrogant people on the pitch, rightfully so, right? Because they're supposed to be the goal scorers. But it was a breath of fresh air to hear him go, I'm just here to play football. I'm here to play soccer. I just want to get to work type attitude. So very refreshing to hear. But you kind of talk about, him picking the MLS and FC Cincinnati over the likes of Ligue 1, France, Premier League. Some people a little upset about it because they probably would have thought he would have gone more European. How do you think this influences future moves for players, either from the Belgian league or players, like Kevin himself?
Well, it's interesting because I was talking earlier about the revenues, the money that is now available in American football. I think that's very persuasive. As I was saying earlier, the combination of circumstances has come together really strongly in Cincinnati's favour here. They were able to move very fast, and I think that the European interest in Kevin, I think there was a slight sense, and I get this just from talking to some agents that I know who were very well aware of kind of Kevin, and talking to some clubs, that I think there was a feeling that some clubs in Europe were really interested in Kevin, but not quite 100% convinced he would necessarily be able to kind of step up a level from the Belgian league. And the Belgian league actually is the well, from a UEFA point of view, it's considered number 8 in Europe. So it's certainly up there. And if you're a young player, you will get a lot of opportunities to play in Belgium. The academies are very good, and there's a very clear pathway for young players to develop. If you look at Kevin's career, Kevin's been scoring goals since he started. Going back to the beginning, the lower leagues of French football, French amateur football. When he's at Nîmes, and then he goes to another club. Around about the same level called Béziers. Kevin started to score goals noticeably there. So from very early on, it was obvious that this was a player who had the very real potential to develop quickly and break out. And Cercle were able to take advantage of their relationship with Monaco, because Cercle Bruges are actually owned by Monaco. Monaco are owned by the Russian multi-billionaire Dmitry Rublev. Many people tend to make the mistake of thinking that Cercle obviously have had a huge investment in them as a club because of that, but actually they haven't. It's been very, very modest. Cercle have benefited from having some really, really good footballing people in key operational roles inside the club, and that's allowed them to put an operating structure in place that has allowed them to develop young players in the right way. I mean, they do get young players from Monaco coming over on trial because of the relationship they have with the clubs, and they're able to take advantage, obviously, of some of Monaco's facilities and their wider scouting network, being a bigger club. But Cercle have done this by having good people in the right positions. And that relationship, I think, allowed them to spot Kevin early and take advantage of that. And I think the money, just to come full circle in this, I think the money available in American football now, it will make it more and more persuasive for European players to want to come to the MLS and make it easier for MLS clubs to compete with European clubs. And what Cincinnati have done here is, pressed all of the right buttons ahead of that January window opening, so that there was no competition essentially for them. I mean, Kevin could have waited another few weeks. He could have waited another 6 weeks, but I think Cercle wanted to get the deal done to optimise the sale. I think Kevin was keen to get the deal done, and I think as soon as he came for his visit, I think he felt okay. There's a lifestyle here. There's good size of crowds. The whole package, I think, kind of really gives him what he wants, and I think he's genuinely excited to take this next step.
Do you think talking about growth in forms of, is this good or bad for the player? Obviously, we're not going to know until, play starts really, but how much of a risk from a competitive level do you think this is from, him going into the MLS?
Well, I don't think we'll really know, until we've seen a few games. I think Kevin will, the transition will be fairly seamless for him. I don't think this is one of those deals where a player's going to need a good few months to kind of acclimatise to a new country or a new culture. I don't think that's the case here. Kevin will already know a number of the players based in the MLS, some who've played in Belgium before, some who have experience of crossed Kevin's path actually, and generally in his footballing career. So he does know a number of people already out there, I think, and has a good understanding and awareness of that as a league. He will definitely have done his homework in that sense. So I think the transition will be quite smooth. I wouldn't expect too many problems. I think he understands the expectations on him as well, and is quite comfortable with that. He knows he's been bought to score goals, and actually that's something Kevin is good at. And I think getting this move, I think, will just give him that added bit of motivation now to hopefully go to another level. What that level will mean for him is what nobody knows yet, and that's the last ceiling thing. That's the exciting thing about deals like this. There's quite a lot of people disappointed around Europe, not just in the clubs that actually had an active interest in Kevin. There's fans from clubs all around Europe who were kind of hoping that their club would sign Kevin, who didn't even have an active interest in him. So a lot of football fans have been kind of tracking Kevin Denkey in their own right, and I've seen fans from other clubs go, expressing their own disappointment that, they were never in at the table to be part of these conversations because they were aware that this was a player who, was essentially kind of going places. I think Kevin's first choice for a long time was England. I think Kevin was quite keen to go to the Premier League. I think the truth is there weren't many Premier League clubs in England willing to match this fee or to match what Cercle were looking for. I know Cercle were quite keen to get something in the region of 20 million for Kevin, and they've got kind of quite close to that, and I don't think anyone else was really willing to beat what Cincinnati were willing to offer. And the way the deal's been made up as well, the vast majority of this bumper deal is in one sitting as well. So there's only a very small part of it that's due in bonuses. And I think the structure of deals now is incredibly important. So there may well have been clubs that were prepared to offer more, but how the instalments were going to work may well have not worked either for Kevin or for Cercle. So the fact that Cincinnati were willing to go, look, we really want you, we're willing to pay essentially all of it up front now is a real sign of intent, I think, and also how much they believe in and Kevin's potential to fit into the missing piece for them, if you like, and also take Cincinnati to another level as well.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Well, obviously we've talked about it all. We appreciate you coming on, giving us some insight on our new signing. Hopefully here in December, right, we'll be able to see him, kind of glimpses of him maybe training as January and February comes around as well. It'll be really exciting to see Kevin getting used to his new teammates, new atmosphere. Maybe we'll see him around the city, who knows. But go ahead and tell Scott, everyone, where they can follow you, follow the Belgian podcast, all platforms. Let them know.
Yeah, well, we produce a weekly show at the Belgian Football Podcast, a weekly show around about an hour and a quarter every week that covers all the latest news and action across the Belgian football landscape. You can find that wherever you get your podcasts. So just search for the Belgian Football Podcast. You'll find us there. You'll find all the special episodes there as well. All that content is free to download. Has been for a while and will be for the foreseeable. We like to make it accessible to people. You can find me individually on Twitter or X, if you call it X. Some people choose not to. I still don't.
I'm a Twitter guy. Yeah, I'm a Twitter guy.
Yeah, it'll never change for me either. Yeah, that rebrand was a disaster, but that's another story. Yeah, so you can find me on Twitter at Scott_coin. And you can find my consultancy at Coin Consultant. So yeah, you can find me in a number of places if you kind of want to hunt me down. But yeah, if you're able to watch Belgian football on ESPN Plus there in the States, and you do follow it a little bit on an ongoing basis, then our podcast may very well be of interest for you.
Yeah, awesome. Thanks, Scott, for hopping on. Appreciate it.
Hey, FC Cincinnati fans. We are pumped to share our new sponsor, Peak Cocktails.
I'm sipping on the passion fruit margarita, which is so spicy, and it makes me feel like I'm on the beach.
Ooh, that sounds great. I'm drinking the blood orange spritz, which has a great subtle ginger flavor coming from its scientifically formulated recipe to promote exercise recovery, enhance relaxation, and support a better night's sleep.
Ryan, that's exactly why I love them. Their cocktails are designed to fit seamlessly into your health-conscious lifestyle, giving you the enjoyment of a delicious adult drink without the downsides of alcohol.
Guys, next time you are looking for that post-workout drink or an afternoon pick-me-up, grab a Peak Cocktail. Visit them at www.peakcocktails.com and use the code FLYINLION at checkout to get 20% off your first order. Zach, enjoy your drink.
And we're back. Welcome to the second half of the Flyin Lion podcast. Thanks for tuning in for that interview with Scott from the Belgian Football Podcast. Really appreciate him joining us, taking some time to kind of touch on Belgian football, as a whole. Obviously, the Kevin Denkey transfer. Ryan, listening to the podcast there, what'd you think about the first half of the interview there?
Yeah, really insightful. I thought he had a lot of interesting things to say about, his kind of fit with Cincinnati, maybe some of the reasons to why, this club would want to get rid of such a good player as well. And then to kind of hear from his perspective, the concrete interest that, he really had from some of the other European giants, if you want to call him that. It just kind of solidifies how legit this guy is. I agree though with Sam, thanks to Scott for joining. It looks like we also had Cincy Soccer Talk was also chatting with Scott as well. So, different perspectives, is what I would say. So from our side, from their side, it's good that we're hearing, from, over there, in Belgium, and to really kind of, again, solidify how big of a move this was. We heard it all through, Tom Bogert here and some of the other critics, I think Taylor Twellman had mentioned something as well, but it really solidified it and he had a lot of cool things to say.
Yeah, absolutely. He not only touched on Kevin Denkey, but like I had said, he touched on, the Belgian style of football, everything like that, how the MLS game is kind of similar to the Belgian game, in fact, with it being more physical. So yeah, definitely thought that was really cool. But Ryan, we have also some news, which once again, like you said, I mean, soccer's still rolling, even though we're in the off season. I mean, obviously playoffs are going on, so we'll touch on that if anybody cares about that. But we've got some big news coming out of the FC Cincinnati land, Cincinnati soccer land in general. Caitlin Clark joins the NWSL ownership bid with FC Cincinnati's ownership.
Yeah, what a massive thing to just like read on your phone. You're scrolling through the socials and you see like Caitlin Clark. You're like, okay, I'm gonna, hear about the Indiana Fever. And then you go NWSL ownership. Okay. In Cincinnati. Oh, wow. Okay, cool. So yeah, I mean, massive addition, like I kind of had mentioned, on our outline, Sam, Caitlin's like the big name in women's sports, like globally right now, I would say. And she really exploded onto the scene the last couple of years, coming out of Iowa and now taking the stage. Rookie of the year, I think, for, the women's league. Pretty incredible that, she agreed with this. For a while, it sounds like, they're trying to keep this under wraps, and she actually did meet with the commissioner for the NWSL, and they're really excited about some of the interest that she can bring in. Joining some big names, in terms of other ownership groups throughout the league, that hopefully, this becomes solidified. But she would join a lot of the likes of, Brittany Mahomes and some of these other people, as much as I hate Brittany Mahomes. But yeah, it is pretty cool to hear this. I'd put it out a little meme, though. Sam mentioned like the news keeps rolling. Having the car go forward on the interstate because, hey, we're going to cruise into this off season. Nope, screw it. We're going to go take the exit ramp, and we get all of this new information every single day. It's fun, though. I mean, it's all positive things that we're hearing. What were your initial thoughts?
Yeah, like you said, news was everywhere, right? As soon as you saw it, it just, I mean, like wildfire, right? Every news source picked it up. What I thought was really funny is that Adam Schefter actually like had a hand in reporting it, so I thought that was pretty funny. Usually,
Yeah, for those who don't realize,
yeah,
like he's the NFL guy.
yeah, exactly.
He's the
So
one that's
he's
reporting
usually in
on
another
all
world
of
over
that.
there. So for him to announce that, not only is it in basketball, but it's in soccer as well. So I thought that was funny. But yeah, obviously we're competing with the likes of Cleveland and Denver at this point. It was announced. So I think you have here, we should have an answer by the end of the year, which, like you said, the commissioner had even said it helped Cincinnati's chances, meeting with Caitlin Clark, kind of understanding why she wants to be a part of this ownership and bring soccer to Cincinnati, and would be the first NWSL club in Ohio, and what it means to her, right? So obviously it feels kind of like the momentum's swinging in our direction.
Do you think they gave her the Kevin Denkey treatment for, hey, let's sell you on the pitch of this club? Obviously, she's not a player, but from an ownership standpoint, we had been talking about who's our big celebrity investors, that we're going to get. Like we had it on the FCC side. I think the Kelsey brothers were at one point like talking about it. But Caitlin Clark comes in, maybe she goes to a playoff game, maybe she, sees the facilities or just hears about it and says, this has the highest chance, I'm going to invest my money in something that is built, that is established. Cleveland doesn't have that. Denver doesn't have that. You already have such a layout and a model for possible success moving forward. The question would be like the money front. From all I'm hearing, like Cleveland has money to give right now to the league. Cincinnati obviously has the facilities. They have everything set. But if the league's looking at more of the money side of things first or not, like that would be the interest. I don't know. We had Orlando that just won the NWSL. And I believe Marta, one of the Brazilian legends in the women's sport, had finally won, in the NWSL. So hopefully that'll be Rose Lavelle one day, and Caitlin Clark in attendance, because I think that would be pretty special.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, to have an NWSL club in Cincy, I think it's been from the start, right? Jeff Birding was saying it at the beginning when the club was first founded into the MLS. He said we're not done, right? So excited to see some new things coming up. And speaking of coming up, we've got 10-year anniversary coming up. A lot of things we're rolling out. So obviously we want to kind of put our spin and our twist on things that we want to see. Obviously we'll put polls out, as the episode comes out here on what you guys want to see, pick your brain. But this is kind of from our perspective, what we want to see for the 10-year anniversary.
Yeah, 2025 will be FC Cincinnati's 10-year anniversary. Man, what a time. I mean, like 10 years have already passed. We had some great moments. We had some not so good moments, but a lot of things that I feel like the club could consider doing. I touched on it last episode a little bit with this district they're going to build, possibly like a walk of fame in the future. Is this the time to announce something like that? I think that would be kind of special, but initial thoughts that we kind of came up with, my first one was, do we have a throwback Nippert game? I think this is definitely unlikely to happen based on, field constraints and a relationship that you have to, kind of set to begin the year, scheduling wise and all that. But how special would that be to have another MLS game there? Just kind of like a throwback game.
Yeah, I mean, if NYCFC can play games in 3 different stadiums throughout the year, why
Sure.
can't we, have a game at Nippert Stadium, right? I feel like that'd be really cool for the fans, be able to fill the bowl there, get 30,000 plus, like we used to.
Yeah.
So that's a good shout there. Ryan, any thoughts to some original players possibly pulling the sword as well?
Yeah, we've had several, already. If we think about, Corbin Bone, the Manuel Ledesmas of the world, I think we've might have had a Justin Hoyt. Shout out to him. He just got announced as the assistant coach for the U13-14s for the FCC Academy. But I think Hoyt would be a really nice one. I think Delbridge coming back, I think would be really cool. Maybe if some of the original players like all came together, from that first year, and we had a little, email reunion for the FCC players. Come on back, and we'll do a collective sword pull. But any specific shouts that you can think of?
Yeah. I mean, I'll kind of touch on that, bringing players together. So we've seen across the pond the Sidemen charity matches that are becoming extremely
That's true.
popular over there. Ryan,
True.
what about a USL 2016 Legends charity match? Like, how cool would that be? Obviously, we have a lot of players that are still, playing today, a decent amount, but for those who are retired or, we have had some play for us in the TST tournament. What do you say to coming and doing a charity match at TQL Stadium? Proceeds would go to, maybe the FC Cincinnati Foundation. Like, it would be a feel-good story. Like, that would be a really cool idea there.
No, I really do like that idea. You're right. Over in Europe, that's become very popular. If you think about the different people you could add to that, even from like the Cincinnati space,
Legends, yeah.
If we think about, the Speeds of the world, I am Speed, like he's from Cincinnati. That would be a good shout. He was at one of the US games. Over the
Nick
summer.
Lachey would be there. I mean, he's at every event.
Yeah, Lachey would be a good one. No, I could think of a bunch. Blanking on the YouTube streamer as well. That's popular in the MLS space. Jake, I think.
Yeah.
Is Bradford, maybe?
Something.
So another shout there. But yeah, you could definitely get some social media presence and bring those guys in. Chad Ochocinco for sure would play in that one.
Exactly. Exactly. We're already creating a starting 11.
I like the shout of that. Yeah. That's a really good idea. Or do you do something like in terms of like a concert or something to celebrate the 10-year? I don't know who would best represent.
Would it be on the field?
Maybe. Maybe.
I don't know.
I mean,
there's hesitation there.
Do we bring the Killers in to play Mr. Brightside?
Ooh.
I mean, that would be a kind of interesting
performance
shout.
Of Brightside. All right.
Yeah, I mean, like in front of the home Bailey, like that would be electric.
Do you go post game though, or do you go pre-game?
Pre-game. You just like
I'm just saying post game. Obviously, that's the game to play. Like that's the music to play, but you have to win.
Imagine like, I mean, I'm thinking of like Anfield and Liverpool, where everyone is singing collectively, like, but everyone is singing, with the Killers in the front. That would be just incredible. I don't even know. Are the Killers even together still? Who knows?
No idea.
No idea. Yeah, people are probably listening like, yeah, they're not together. Honestly, no idea. But another idea, Sam, I think you had a really good idea here with a fan design jersey. That's a good shout. I think we've had so many mock-ups over the year. Like,
Yeah.
let's
Is
see.
it doable? Probably
Yeah,
not.
I mean, from year to
Yeah.
year, there's at least 15 to 20 different mock-ups that we see, and at least one, would be really cool. Now, for those who kind of are in the know with the jerseys, like this has been predetermined for like 2 years
Oh,
now.
yeah.
I'm pretty sure Adidas and FC
Probably.
Cincinnati have,
Yeah.
come up with the jersey probably in 2013 or even, 2022. So who knows? We'll see where that goes. The legacy patch is kind of a cool idea as well. So having like the original logo, for the jersey possibly
Because I
too. We
know
saw it with Orlando.
so Nippert Stadium's celebrating an anniversary this year, right? That'd be kind of cool to pay homage to that, maybe like as a part of the 10-year anniversary, like patch on the jersey, like Nippert's on there, right? Um,
Yeah.
could be something cool.
Yeah, no, we saw Orlando though that did their old USL logo
Mhm.
for their kit this year, and San Jose did as well for theirs. So you might be onto that. It's going to be a new kit, new design, maybe a little nod to a prior, USL one, but with the old logo would be very, very interesting. Yeah, I think that's all good shouts. Again, would love to hear from you guys on, what should we consider for this 10th anniversary. The new kit is obviously the big one. Are we going to get the Bavarian Diamonds? I think that's everyone's big shout right now is to see those come back. Is it going to be a similar stripe type pattern, that we had before? That was a classic. Are we going to get a black kit? Just kidding. No, it's going to be a blue one. It's going to be another blue one. We're due for that one, but yeah, I still am holding on to the black jersey.
I think it'll be that alternate jersey, right? Like we talked
True.
about earlier
Yeah.
this year. Like if we sell enough jerseys, maybe that'll be the black alternate.
Yeah. No, good point. Still kind of funny, Sam, to remember, we'll transition here to the fact that the MLS playoffs are still going on. Like I still feel like, we're a couple weeks into the FCC offseason and so much has happened already. Like I mentioned, earlier on, but we did have some crazy games. LAFC, the top seed in the West, was knocked out. The Galaxy look like the hot hand right now, winning 6-2, over Minnesota.
So on that, the Galaxy, right? 15 goals this postseason, seven more than the team that's in second, and the team that's in second isn't even in the playoffs anymore in Atlanta. And
Dang.
also, the Galaxy have four players with more than three goals.
Hmm.
Four.
Shout out to John Nelson, former FCC player on the Galaxy. He's got, I think, 3 assists in the MLS playoffs, which is, I think, second in the total playoffs.
Yeah.
And Sam, to add to your stat for the Galaxy, I saw one that was interesting. Their goal differential is now like plus 13 or 14.
Yeah.
During the regular season, it was like plus 17 for the entire season. So kind of crazy. It really shows you in the MLS, like hitting your stride at the right time is so
Longevity.
key.
Yeah.
If you look at the Galaxy earlier on in the year, you're like, all right, it's a decent team. But like now they've really come together and look at the transfers they had, Marco Royce that they add. They're really clicking in all facets right now. So a final four of the Galaxy, Seattle, Orlando, and the Red Bulls. We talked about it last time. Anyone that you're wanting to see there?
I mean, I will say I wanted to ask you this real quick because it may go into who we're kind of rooting for or looking at. So for me, as far as like who's had the toughest road, right? Looking at these four teams, I would say for me, I would say Seattle, just because both wins versus the Dynamo came in PKs, back-to-back games, and then they had the one goal win versus LAFC in stoppage time, at LA, right? So you're doing it in their home, territory, doing it to then knocking them out. But who do you think had that toughest road? That means, I'm kind of rooting for Seattle there a little bit.
No, I would go with the same, and just the fact that I think they're playing Galaxy going to be like at
Hmm.
home as well,
Yeah.
so they have to win on the road again. The seeding for like what the MLS Cup Finals would be is just crazy, and And this is honestly like why like a playoff format, it shows you like, okay, anyone can win in it, which makes it exciting, but like it doesn't, in my opinion, still like truly show who the best teams are
Doesn't tell the
over
whole
the course of the
story.
year.
Yeah.
Over the course of the year, which is like the bigger testament of longevity throughout it. But yeah, you're going to see upsets, and that's what, again, people want to see
I will
in
say
the US.
you had talked about Orlando. Orlando, you could make a case for Orlando having the toughest road as well, because they went to game 3 with Charlotte, right down to the wire. Two
But it's
PKs,
Charlotte,
two
it's
PKs
Atlanta.
in that series though. Two PKs in that
No.
series, and you have a 1 goal game against ATL. But I mean, I still got to give it to Seattle. I'm just saying,
Yeah.
you could give shouts for Orlando as like
No, I
second
could see it.
toughest.
I could see it. I mean, it makes you look at like what FCC could have done in this
Yeah,
now, and
absolutely. Yeah.
just kick yourself because, even with the roster we had, some of the mismatching and the striker issues, and like, I still, would favor ourselves in a one-off game against some of these teams.
Hmm.
Especially if we're, again, typically playing at home, that's kind of like a more of a given, but this year was not that way. But yeah, it'll be interesting to kind of follow that. Hopefully, I don't think there's like a big delay, is there, for this? I think at least the next round is
I don't
like
think so.
this weekend.
No.
And then finally, the finals are another like 10 days or something after that. It's just ridiculous. But we'll see what happens. Big thing for FC Cincinnati land, I guess, is roster decisions. On Wednesday, are we going to get that announcement? I think that's the rumored thing right now, in terms of, whose contract are we taking? Whose contract are we exercising? What are we going to do with the guys that are in the fringe is the biggest thing for me. What youngsters do we see kind of potential with, or what ones do we cut? Couple guys that were on loan, what happens with those, as well? Because I think even though like, Barrial is still on loan, technically like his loan is ending. So what's going to happen? Because I think Brazil's league is ongoing. Is that correct?
Yeah.
So who knows, how that affects their team. It's like in the middle of their season. So that's an interesting one as well. But we'll find out a lot on Wednesday. And Turkey Day, there's going to be a lot of interesting FC Cincinnati conversations going on.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's crazy, right? You're talking, like you said, over Thanksgiving. You're going, hey, did you see all the FC Cincinnati news? You see Caitlin Clark? You see like all this stuff? You see the roster decisions? What do you think? Should be exciting. I'm looking forward to FC Cincinnati putting out maybe some more content. Maybe we get Kevin Denkey trying some, Thanksgiving, meals or something, right? I don't know. Social team, get on it, right? But yeah, excited to see some more stuff.
Yeah, if anything, we're going to see him playing chess because apparently this guy is just a wizard on the board games, which was fascinating to hear. Shout out to Carter Chapley for that article. I thought it was pretty fascinating, like his mind on the field as a soccer player. He's got a great IQ for the game, but then you hear off the field, it's like, what are your interests? Chess. It's like, wow, that's impressive. Like at a young age too, I think that he was doing it and learning it. The guy knows like 3 or 4 different
Yeah,
languages,
yeah,
which is
yeah.
common over in Europe. But he's learning, Spanish so that he can be able to communicate with other players on the field. So he seems like, again, like a team player. I learned a lot from that article. So again, shout out to Carter. And then I think there was one other thing I wanted to shout out, but I totally forget what it was.
If you can't think of it, then we'll get it on the next episode. But I think that'll recap everything that we've seen in the news for this week. Should be rolling out, like Ryan said. I think one more guest episode. But I guess he found it right before I was about to close it.
Yeah. The honorable card of the week that I'm going to shout out is just the fact that, year after year, we get this new transfer, especially this year, and big number 9, going to be hopefully selling out jerseys. Why can't we buy these? It's Black Friday week. Like, let us get the new kits now so that we can, gift them for Christmas. How awesome would it be for all these young kids to open up a Denkey jersey? But
I
now
hear
they have to
you.
wait.
Yeah, I hear you. I hear you. But speaking on, as someone who gets a new jersey every year for his birthday, I mean, obviously, I think you just feel empathetic for everybody else, right? That's what
Time it out, man. Time it out. I think it's hilarious when you see they announce him and it's like, oh, he's in the River kit he'll never wear.
Yeah, it's true.
But just surprise us. They announce his signing and then he's holding the New Jersey without like no context, just like, whoa, what was that? I think that would be pretty cool.
It would be.
And your jersey sales would just shoot up.
Put it on your Christmas list. Maybe it'll come true before Christmas. We'll see. But everybody, thanks for listening to the episode. Hope you enjoyed the interview with Scott. We got more coming for you. Thanks for listening.